Hiya, and welcome back to my channel. Hope you are well on this hump day of Capricorn season. Why are water signs always alone? So thank you very much, Eva, for this and the other requests. Well, the water signs, first of all, let's start with that. So there are 3 water signs in astrology, and they are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. Water in astrology, or maybe you could even say in alchemy and spirituality, water is feelings, water is emotions, water signs then are therefore kind of in their feelings more than the other signs, or people who are what I would call water heavy. So you might not be a water sign. For example, your sun might not be in Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces, but you might have a lot of your other planets in a water sign or water signs, or you might have a water rising sign, or you might have a lot of planets activity going on in one of the water houses, which is going to be the 4th house, the 8th house, and the 12th house. 12th house. Just because you don't have your sun in a water sign doesn't mean that this video or other videos about water signs, about water as an element, won't relate to you, because astrology, your personal natal astrology, is like a cocktail, and your sun is just one of the ingredients of that cocktail. And the sun and the sign that the sun is in might not even be the most powerful flavor of the cocktail, or it might not be the base of the cocktail, in fact. So you really do have to look at the entire birth chart to get the full profile of your natal astrology, your personal astrology, or the astrology of someone else, something else, or some event, or some space, because that's what astrology also deals with. But anyway, digressing. Yes, water signs then, they are the yin half of the elemental yang. So there's a yin and a yang to everything. You might already know the yin and yang sort of ideas, but there's a yin and a yang to everything. But within the yin, there's also a yin and a yang. And the yin of that yin and yang is water. The yang is fire. So the yang of the original yin and yang is earth and air. And the yin of the original yin and yang is water and fire, if that makes sense. And so water here is the yin within the yin, okay? Yin, very, very briefly, being the internal, the passive, the receptive, the dark, or the hidden. Let's start with Scorpio then. So why are water signs always alone? And by the way, I just want to say that being alone doesn't mean that you're lonely or that it's a bad thing. Scorpio, as a water sign, it's kind of like water being under thick ice. So Scorpionic people, not just a water sign, but very icy somehow on top, very steely, and they seem actually to be quite inaccessible. They either are inaccessible actually, or they just seem to be that way, and that can be what I guess keeps certain people away from them, or gives the wrong message to certain people. There is this steeliness or this iciness about Scorpionic people, especially Scorpio rising. The Scorpio rising archetype on its own could have this, especially because the rising sign is how you appear. It's how you appear. It's your aura. Scorpio is also Martian plus Plutonian energy, because Scorpios are ruled by Mars and then Pluto. And so this kind of energy really does intimidate other people, and it also mystifies other people. But this, whether it's intimidating and or mystifying, there's anyway this sense of these Scorpionic people, these water signs, being scaring people away, or they kind of bring people to them in a more secret, clandestine sort of way. And so there's that kind of more isolated aspect to the lives of someone who is Scorpionic. And in the emotional sense, especially if you are Scorpio moon, yes, your emotions as well, you really just, it's quite a difficult thing for you, if you're Scorpio moon, to let people see what your emotional reservoir looks like, to basically tell people or show people what is going on deep down there for you. Scorpionic people tend to want to be in control. They tend to want stability because Scorpio is fixed water. It is about fixating on something, on someone, and that can obviously make you somewhat controlling, but also Scorpionic types, or any of the fixed signs, or anyone who has a lot of fixed energy in their chart, they want something that is very stable, constant, reliable. And that can also kind of make them, especially in sort of today's world, it can make them more lonely or alone, because a lot of people are more fleeting or fickle or easily distracted. So you could get more kind of loner types, lone wolf types when it comes to Scorpio, because they're kind of seeking something that is not always there, or is not as easy to find as perhaps it has been in the past. Wanting, yes, to be in control and wanting stability. Also, Scorpionic water is the essence of reality. It is feeling reality and what is real. I talked about these things in my previous video on Scorpio and Scorpio's strengths and weaknesses. You can check that out if you want. But anyway, this essence of reality basically talks about the ugly truths. So this is another thing that can either make Scorpionic people just want to be alone, or it can again push people away because these other people don't want to know or see the ugly truths about something or about someone or about the relationship. Whereas a Scorpionic person often can't help themselves but talk about the realities, the ugly realities. You know, with Scorpio, I often say this, but if Libra, the seventh sign of the zodiac, if Libra is kind of the very aesthetic, cordial, peacemaking sort of celebrity going down the red carpet and socializing and all that jazz, Scorpio, the eighth sign of the zodiac, coming after Libra then, is the archetype that wants to get that celebrity Libran archetype on their own, in a dark room, looking at themselves in the mirror. It wants to put them down in that well so they can actually look at the reality of the relationships and the social interactions, and actually the substance, the psychological or the metaphysical substance of all the glitz and the glam, of all the pleasures and the beauty and the aesthetics. They want them to really incise and get into that. And what the Scorpionic archetype also wants to do is kind of rip that red carpet off the floor, which most Librans do not want to do, but the Scorpionic archetype does want to do that because it's very interested in what lies beneath. It's very interested in the dirt and the truth. And yeah, anyway, that kind of thing can kind of either keep the Scorpionic person quite isolated and alone, or it can push others away who just don't want to see. They don't want to see the dirt and the dust because most of the time they're not ready. They're not as ready as a Scorpionic person has always been since they were very young. Also with Scorpios, they are often skeptical people, especially Mercury and Scorpio people, Scorpio risings, very skeptical and quite vocal about this skepticism. Because they're skeptical about other things, they just prefer anyway to be in isolation or at a distance from people and things. Another point is that Scorpionic people tend to want to be alone, and they want to be in secret, somehow in secrecy, and they want to be hidden with the taboo, however or whatever taboo is construed. Now, taboo depending on time, space, culture, all the different programs surrounding them, all the different programs that you might have downloaded, whatever taboo is from one person to the next, from one spirit to the next, is completely variant. But anyway, taboo, Scorpionic people want to be there, at least at a low level. They actually kind of want to be there, and that can just again keep them alone. Or people who come into their lives, they might sense this and be alarmed or think something negative about the Scorpionic person, but it's just that again Scorpionic people are very into lifting the dirty, lifting the carpet, no matter how clean the carpet is on the surface, they're very interested in lifting it up and seeing, yeah, what is on the surface unseen. Finally then, Scorpionic people are very intense, basically, especially if you're talking about a Scorpio rising or a Pluto rising. They have an intensity about them. This can burn others, especially if they have, let's say they have Mercury and Scorpio in the first house. The things they say can just be really scalding, because even though Scorpio is water, feeling, intuitive, and Scorpio is ice, kind of frosty, steely. Under that is a lot of the boiling water that is coming up, and eventually it's going to melt through all that ice and come out, because Scorpio is Mars-led. So if you're Scorpio rising, especially your life path ruler is Mars. And all of this anyway, whether we're talking Mars or Pluto, these planets, they create a lot of intensity around the individual. And again, it can burn people, it can also scare people, and it can also hurt. In extreme cases, it can hurt people. Someone who really doesn't know themselves and doesn't know how they are affected by Mars, Pluto, or if they have very difficult aspects natally, they can actually hurt other people as well, or be very kind of deceptive or conniving. But anyway, going back to the original point, they are intense. Alrighty, let's talk about Pisces then. I didn't write these in the traditional water sign order, which is Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces. For some reason I've gone Scorpio, Pisces, Cancer. I don't know why. But anyway, Pisces. The Piscean archetype, and again, this can really relate to you even if you're not a Pisces sun. So going back to my previous points of, you might have a lot of planets in Pisces, you might be a Pisces rising, or you might have a lot of planets in the 12th house. But for the Piscean person, one reason that they can always be alone, or seem to always be alone, is that they are an all-encompassing sponge for vibes. So whatever the water sign or energy, we're talking about vibes, emotional vibrations. We're talking about energies of the emotional feeling kind. Piscean archetype is very all-encompassing and yeah, like a sponge, a massive sponge. And Pisces is very yin as well. All the water signs are yin, but especially Pisces. Pisces is the last zodiac sign, and so it's very asleep spiritually, and it's also absorbing everything, good, bad, and ugly vibes, like a huge, huge sponge. And this basically, I would say, keeps the Piscean wanting to be alone, wanting to like meditate in many different ways. Meditation can be literally they go to meditation class, or they just want to be left alone in their room with their music, or in their room with their Netflix, or in their room with their gin, whatever the frig it is. Meditation doesn't have to be anything fancy or capital S spiritual. Whatever it is, however it is, the Piscean archetype wants to be left alone because of this this sponge kind of spirit that they have, which is just absorbing everything, taking it all on. And it's not even intentional, it's just taking it all on because of the most intense sort of all-encompassing sensitivity. And therefore, Pisceans want often to escape into fantasies or distractions from reality. Because if you think about the Piscean archetype is about all that is illusory, all that is fantastical, all that is out of this world. But we are on Earth, we are in reality, and most of us have to go to work, we have responsibilities, we are finite in our anatomical life, we are finite, we are not invincible, and Pisces, remember, is ruled by Jupiter, just like Sagittarius. So Pisceans and Sagittarians can often have this kind of hubris, especially the Sagittarian can have this hubris where they're swiftly reminded. They're swiftly reminded that they're not God or even a demigod, but they often feel that way. The Piscean archetype is kind of similar. They want to be left alone to swim in all of their fantasies and to dive into all the magic that is their inner world. Just want to be distracted from bills and nasty people and gossip and the harshness and the coldness, and they just want to be able to escape it all. That's another reason I think why they are always alone, or seemingly always alone. Also, the Piscean is more fulfilled by imagery. Imagery, again, it could be through music, it could be through poetry, it could be through painting, it could be through photography, especially like Pisces risings, Pisces suns. A lot of them that I know, they are really into photography. If they're not like officially photographers, they're really into it as a hobby and interest. They're always on their Instagram, they're always happy to be browsing photos, either that they've taken or just photos of really quite magical, sort of breathtaking landscapes or cityscapes, whatever it is. The Piscean is very fulfilled by imagery. That as well can be very hard to can be very hard in the mundane world, because again, we are often having to go to work, to school, or both, whatever. We are often having to really get stuck down into routines, and depending on your spiritual level, it can just get really tiring to keep that up. It can be really tiring to stay motivated to exist in that way. These water signs will often want to be alone with imagery, just looking through photo albums, Facebook photos, memories of the imaginative kind or the photographic kind. All that has been kind of documented in nice, lovely, photogenic, fantastical, magical sort of ways. That's kind of where they want to be, and a lot of the time that's quite a private thing, that's quite a solitary thing, and also you don't really have much time to engage in that. For most of us, in most cases, we don't have much time to do that, and so when they have the opportunity, the Piscean really is gonna go there and do that. The Piscean archetype also often feels lost. Solitude kind of helps them find a way. If Sagittarius, which is Jupiter-led, finds a way by going out, because Sagittarius is the yang sign of the two Jupiter signs, if Sagittarius finds a way by going out and literally traveling and working at a travel agency, or going from country to country, or really going from party to party, non-stop fun kind of life, if that's what Sagittarius is doing, Pisces tends to be doing something more yin, because it's the yin side of Jupiter. Pisces tends to be absorbing a lot of the world. So it might be through books, maybe, like looking through lots of books. It might be through gaming. It might be through fantasy books, fantasy fiction, poetry again. It could be through drugs in extreme, more isolated or sadder cases. It can be through, just throwing yourself into drugs. Whatever it is, there's this sense of, there's this kind of acknowledgement, I guess, with the Piscean archetype, different to Sagittarius. The Piscean kind of knows that they're lost. They already know they're lost, and they're kind of at peace with that, and they're not kind of running away from that, but they're kind of letting whatever comes their way, and whatever looks nice and is magical, they're letting themselves be drawn to that. Whatever it is that draws them into feeling at peace, into feeling at one with this solitude. It could be anything. It could be sex, it could be really escapist sex. It could be really escapist work even. The Piscean can definitely be that kind of person as well, who is working solely for the purpose of escape, is solitarily working solely for the purpose of escaping, having to think about anything else. So it doesn't at all have to be just about the artistic. It can just purely be about escape. But I think, yes, the Piscean archetype is very different to the Sagittarian, because they're not really putting themselves out there so much to socialize and party and interact and constantly distract themselves like the Sagittarian does with jokes and humor and lightheartedness. No, the Piscean archetype is much more still and drawing in, and much more just trying to, I guess, put themselves to sleep, in a sense, put themselves to sleep, or to be okay not not running away from being lost. It's just more finding something, even just one thing that can kind of blanket them, especially with an invisibility cloak or something sparkly to blanket them so that they can remain in this Piscean 12th house Neptunian slumber space. It's definitely not as outgoing in the literal physical extroverted senses that Sagittarius is. They're both of their signs are Jupiter. Jupiter is just making Pisces learn more through absorption, learn more through being still and spiritual in that sense. And so you're probably going to find a lot of Pisceans who, they're the ones who are going to play flutes in the fields, in the wilderness. They're the ones who are going to go camping on their own very often. They're the ones who are going to be these kind of city wanderers with their camera. Could be very Sagittarian in the sense that they travel to many different countries, but even then there's a sense of them preferring to either be alone or to just let their walking take them wherever it will, rather than needing to be around loads of different people or needing to talk to loads of different people or needing to go to loads of different parties and functions. It's not really that. Pisceans also have this passive yes nature to them. Some of the signs have this as well. For example, Libra. If you are a Libra or a Libran, you probably have this as well. If you are Virgoan, you definitely have this. But some of the signs have this big yes nature to them. And it's very passive. It's interesting because you're saying yes, you're affirming something, but it's a very passive thing as well. It's like, yes, yes, yes. You often, especially the Pisceans and the Virgoans, and the Librans as well, they find it difficult to say no because it will disappoint. They find it difficult to say no because because there's some sense of wanting to help, there's some sense of wanting to balance, there's some sense of wanting to heal or fix something. It's a little bit different to the Sagittarian yes, or the Aries kind of yesness, which is more about let's just have fun, have a great experience. There's a little bit with Pisces, Libra, and Virgo, there's a little bit more of a kind of, I am kind of indebted, or there's some sort of duty or obligation that I have to fulfill through saying that yes. Pisceans are very passive and they have a very big yes nature about them, and this actually exhausts them, especially the Piscean who doesn't know themselves. It really exhausts them, and also it harms them. And people who have especially Mars and Venus in Pisces, I've seen this more and more, but Mars and Venus in Pisces, or people with a lot of Pisces in their chart, they harm themselves by saying yes to drugs, by saying yes to really risky scenarios, risky situations, risky substances. They say yes a little bit too much and continue to sort of sabotage themselves or become locked in some kind of victim cycle or victimhood, and it can be really, really, really harmful for those who don't know themselves. But anyway, just more generally, this yes passive nature exhausts the Piscean. It harms the Piscean, and for that reason they just want to be alone so that they can swim away into their own expanse, into their own depths. They want to be just left alone so they can recover, so they can get to some semblance of themselves again, not just some being that is constantly affirming someone or something else, not just some being that is saying yes to satisfy all the time, or saying yes to emotionally fulfill some other person all the time. You've got to know yourself very well if you're a Piscean, because you are especially, perhaps you are the most susceptible to this yes-ness that really comes from a sense of duty. The Piscean also has boundary issues. So Jupiter is the primary ruler of Pisces, which gives Pisceans a lot of generosity, which gives them, again, as I mentioned in the first point for Pisces, it gives them this all-encompassing spongeness. That's all true. That's what Jupiter is doing a lot of the time for Pisceans. The secondary ruler of Pisces is Neptune, and unlike with Sagittarius, for the Piscean, boundaries are even more loose or probably non-existent in many cases. Who they are over relating with, or what they are over relating to, or where they are overextending, where they are letting their own lives, personal lives, seep too much into other lives, or too much into the surrounding, the locality. This can sort of encroach. Basically, they can either encroach on others, which pushes others away, actually, because some people might think the Piscean is a little too overwhelming. Yeah, basically, is trying to be too involved in that Jupiterian way. It's trying to be too involved, doesn't know when to stop, when to leave the person alone, when to come out of a particular fantasy. So in some cases it can push people away. It can also cause the Piscean to cheat. If they are in a committed monogamous relationship, it can cause them to cheat because of this sort of feeling that boundaries are so easily dissolved, or even a belief. Piscean and Sagittarians have strong beliefs. So even a belief that boundaries are to be dissolved and that boundaries aren't really meaningful. Neptune makes a lot of boundaries dissolve, and Neptune also confuses the Piscean. The Piscean might have a very true to themselves, they might have a very true spiritual belief or knowledge that, for example, cheating is wrong, but then Neptune comes and puts them in lots of situations where they are challenged. It confuses, because Neptune's about confusion and lies and deceit as well. They're some of the less desirable things that Neptune is about. Neptune's about many great things, but Neptune can be about deceit, lies, illusions. And so the Piscean, yes, has to sort of learn that Neptune can sometimes dissolve their own original beliefs about something. It's different if the Piscean person doesn't have a strong belief, or has another. What am I saying? It's different if the Piscean doesn't believe that cheating is wrong. If they believe that cheating is okay, then fine. Neptune is not really doing much there. But if it's a person who has an original belief, a conviction, a knowing that for them personally it's wrong, Neptune comes in, and Neptune's like, okay, well, how close can you remain to your spirit? How close can you remain to that spiritual knowing when I bring you to a particular scenario, when I dissolve certain circumstances so that it is right there, something sparkly and deceitful is right there. Will you take the bait or not? So Pisceans often deal with this kind of thing, not just with cheating, but like all kinds of things that are about going over the line or over the boundary. And again, it can just make the Piscean generally overbearing in relationships, or it can make people overbearing onto the Piscean, because the Piscean doesn't know their own personal boundaries, and they keep letting all these people come over to their place, come into their workspace. They keep letting people come in, and it just kind of frigs up their own routine. It frigs up their own stability and their own senses of self. And this is why Pisces is the opposite of Virgo. Two ends of the same pole. Pisceans always need to look to Virgo when they're in this kind of trouble, and to start discerning again, to start being like wheat from the chaff. Like, no, this is deceit, this is lies, this is fiction, out with that. Or this is dissolving my boundaries too much, out with that. You need to get into this kind of separation again sometimes. Finally, then, the Piscean as a water sign has very spiritual and religious connections often that sort of call them to be alone. So it's kind of like Sagittarius, like the Nelly Furtado song, The Right Way. I know the right way, I know the right road to take. I may get lost on my way, but I'll get back up on the right road today. Something along those lines. But Nelly Furtado, being a Sag Sun, Sag Rising, has perfectly encapsulated in that song and many other of her songs the Sagittarian sort of just knowledge of the right way, and that's the explanation as to why they travel all the time, as to why they are gallivanting and so optimistic. Very similar with Pisces. They also know, they also tend to be deeply spiritual, deeply knowing, and in many of the kind of third dimensional earth ways, they tend to be very religious people, or they could be very religious, because they just know that they already have a calling. Like Sagittarius knows that they already know there's a road to go down. Pisces already knows that they are kind of a temple, that they are kind of a shrine, or that they are kind of, there's already something within them. It's just different in that Pisces usually doesn't feel the need to venture out physically so much as Sagittarius. Pisces doesn't feel the need to interact with humans even so much like the Sagittarian might. This is why a lot of them might want to be alone, because they feel that their calling puts them there, draws them there. They need to be alone. They're content in that. There's not the restlessness. They're content, and that can make them to others appear to be loners or lonely or sad, but they're not. They're not. They're actually really, really content. And it's often said about Pisces that they are the amalgamation of all the zodiac signs. And so it's often said that Pisces has kind of already lived everyone's life. If you look at Pisces, a lot of the time, they're kind of wearing this t-shirt of been there, done that, which can make them a little bit jaded sometimes and withdraw. But that anyway contributes to them often just not feeling like they need to go out and do a lot of like unnecessary things or interactions, because they are so content with their own calling. Finally then, we have Cancer. So Cancer as a water sign that is always or seemingly always alone. With the Cancerian, there are these fears of the unknown or the unstable. Now Cancer, a little bit similar to Scorpio, has a lot of fear because they sense things, they feel like all the water signs, they feel vibes, yes, but with Cancer and the Cancerian, it is fearing what will happen to their soft side, fearing what will happen to their home, fearing what will happen to their family, fearing what this might mean for the past even, and memories, fearing even letting go of things and people and memories. And so they can tend to fear the unknown or the unstable. And what does that mean? That means the Cancerian will often not relate or engage so much with others, keeping them alone or keeping them more housebound or keeping them just in the circles and spaces where they know it's comfortable. So it can actually, in some cases, it can sabotage them from finding a nice date. It can sabotage them from doing things that deep down they want to do, or places that they deep down want to go. It can actually kind of just stop them from doing that because of this fear of, well, what might happen if I go to this unknown space? Or what might happen if I get involved with this person I don't know anything about? It's fear of the instability as well, because Cancerians, just like Capricorns, the Cappies, it's Cappy season now, but just like Capricorns, there's a lot of conservatism actually. There's a lot of protectionism as well, protection of the home, but also of stability, of foundations. And while the Cappy uses sense and logic to protect themselves, the Cancer just uses feelings. What kind of vibe do they get from something? But a lot of the time that vibe, that sense of a vibration might be actually a little bit unfair on the other person or the other thing, because the Cancerian archetype might be reading that vibe based off what they experienced in the past. It's like a pattern resurfacing, especially when we talk about exes or toxic friends or whatever the case might be. They might misread something or someone to just be a repetition of that, and that can make them push people away because they don't want that instability again. They might be pushing the wrong thing or the wrong person away, so as to anyway protect themselves, always so as to protect themselves. The soft side. Cancerians also suffer from this exhaustion. The Piscean has this exhaustion from this yesness. The Cancerian suffers a lot of exhaustion from giving emotional care without receiving. Now the Cancer archetype is the cardinal water sign, so it's the leader. They lead with their emotions. They put their feelings and their emotions first. You will be very hard pressed to force a Cancer to do something they don't feel they should do. Very hard pressed. Whereas a Pisces perhaps might still do it. The Cancerian archetype is going to put their feelings first. What they often think about and feel about is reciprocity. And if they're telling you things giving you things, doing things for you, and they're not getting that back, the Cancerian can become very bitter, can become very sad, all these other emotions can come up, and it makes them not want to interact with people so much, or the same people so much, because they're exhausted from giving and never getting. The Piscean doesn't really care so much, I think, about the getting, because like I said earlier, the Piscean archetype is a little bit more, they've kind of already lived all the signs, so they kind of are already at peace with humanity, at peace with all these spirits and all these vibes. But the Cancerian is a leader with how they feel, putting their feelings first. And if they feel cheated, or if they feel that there's some imbalance in terms of the emotions, they're gonna again feel a whole other host of things about you, or about that personal scenario, situation, which is probably bitter, probably resentful, grudge holding, like Scorpio can really hold grudges. And so this makes them just want to be alone, or it pushes other people away, or rather they push people away. Definitely they'll attract a lot of people who want this emotional care, but Cancerians have to know that they're just gonna be their own worst enemy by attaching themselves to, in these symbiotic relationships, people who never give, but the Cancerian, keeps giving. And it's just going to be like this awful, sort of like a mother who keeps, a mother who has children and can perfectly and strongly raise them on her own, but this mother who just keeps letting in man after man after man, who's like really damaging to her and the family, really toxic, really just outright trash, but they just keep doing it to themselves. This is kind of the Cancerian. No doubt, best believe you will attract, if you're a Cancerian, you will keep attracting people, but the exhausted Cancerian might choose to be more alone, so as to wait, so as to find the actual emotional reciprocity that they deserve. The Cancerian is also ruled by the moon. Moon, water, beyond astrology, or officially astrology, people who do like, who work in like, I don't know, water sports, fishing, sailing, all of these people, professions, activities, events require a certain knowledge of what the moon is doing to earth, to the water. Cancerians being ruled by this planet then in astrology is what causes them especially to have these swings. These like swings of mood, swings of behavior, are swings that only they understand, really. Cancer risings especially, because that's their whole life, that's their life path, being ruled by the moon. Cancer risings, but Cancerians in general. It's only really something that they kind of get, and that they are going through every 2-point-something days in real time, because that's how long it takes for the moon to get through a particular sign. So while it's in one particular sign, that's one vibration or rhythm in terms of mood and emotions. And this is why women are often associated with being moody, being emotional, being sensitive. It's not really that. Regardless of gender, sex, whatever, Cancerians are the more moody people. They are the more frequently changing, rhythmically changing people. But to you, or to the outside person, it looks erratic, but it's not. It's actually part of a cycle. The moon going through all of the 12 signs, taking about a month to do so, and then doing it again, and then doing it again, and then doing it again. That's all it is. And if you don't get the Cancerian person, if you don't know the moon, what the moon's doing, you just won't get that person. And that can make, that can push people away, definitely, because people will see the Cancerian as just moody or unpredictable. But also it can make the Cancerian just want to be alone, just want to push people away, who don't get that the Cancerian person has to go through this, is going through this, and knows that this is just going to be a little phase. But the ones who are, the ones who cannot get behind the Cancer, they are just going to be kind of slowly pushed away, or they're going to walk away themselves, because they just don't get it, and that's fine. Cancerians have good gut feelings, but this does cause them to retreat or to recoil. So kind of like the first point of fears of the unknown, fears of the unstable. The Cancerian archetype, the Cancerian person, retreats and recoils a lot, kind of like a hermit crab, because of their gut feeling. And this gut feeling can make them, again, not participate in things as much. It can make them seem to be more of a loner, or seem to be more, oftentimes they are just more of a loner. And they want to, they kind of, I think a lot of Cancerians, quite similar to Scorpio, these people, but definitely Cancerians, they secretly like when events, parties, a bit like Taurus, when events or parties are kind of cancelled. They kind of like it a lot of the time. They get to brood, they get to stay where they are in their space of comfort, in their bed, their bedroom, whatever it is. They don't have to put themselves into a space or a situation that they might already have been having some kind of bad feeling about. They can just retreat and recoil, and that can make them be more of a loner. Cancerians also have an attachment to house and home, and an attachment to comforts, whether that's comfortable spaces and scenarios, or whether that's comfortable food, like comforting things, because Cancer is about attachment. It's about putting roots. Cancer is about lineage. It's about familial inheritance and all these things. And yes, so once a Cancerian has established a home, a room, a comfort zone, they get very, very attached to that, and they can be the homebodies, the house husbands, the stay-at-home dads, whatever the case might be. They can be these types, or the ones who constantly want to be building other homes and other spaces and other comfort zones elsewhere. They can really be like that, especially the Cancer men, because if you're a Cancer man, you've downloaded a lot of programs that teach you that you should be extroverted and outgoing. You've downloaded a lot of programs that teach you that you should be the breadwinner, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, you're Cancerian. So a lot of that can actually manifest as you just going out and buying another home, or going out and investing in life insurance, or investing in home insurance, or going to IKEA a lot of the time. It could even be like, even if you're so physically, literally outgoing, the places you're going are probably going to be home related or family related. So no matter how far you physically, literally travel, you're always quite close to these more nurturing, more mothering attachments. And that then can make you more of a loner, a homebody, just someone who isn't so interested in interacting with other people or new people, because there's this sense of, I'm already attached to this home or this house, this hometown. I'm already attached, so why would I, need this new person, this new date, this new lifestyle, this new relationship? Why would I need it, kind of thing. Finally then, for Cancerians tend to cling to the past, cling to bad memories, and that is what makes them cautious. Cancer, or if you have a lot of planets in your 4th house, which is the house that Cancer is the landlord of, if that's the case for you, you likely very much exist in your past. Literally, physically existing in your past, like you've never left your hometown, for example, or your home country, for example, or you're constantly going back to your actual physical biological family. You're constantly there, or whether that's more mental, emotional, metaphysical. You're always thinking about your past, your family. You're always thinking about your hometown, your homeland. Because of these things that the Cancerian clings to, it just makes them so much more cautious in general about life, so much more cautious about uprooting, or cautious about going outside, or cautious about making new memories, cautious about making new bonds, cautious about abandoning other people, whether that could be like their hometown friends, or abandoning their bio family, or abandoning the state, even the home state, abandoning the nation that has served them, and or that they have served as well. Like all these things that are clung to, including bad memories, can kind of disable the Cancerian from from going out, from venturing out. It's very similar to the few of the other points that I made for Cancer, preferring to be stuck, mired in something that might even be bad for them. The memories, the roots that they are in might be rotten. And this is something that a lot of Cancerians have to learn as well, like to get away from rotten roots, or a hometown, or a family that doesn't serve them, or obsessing over having to nurture something or someone, which is only like the nurse's obligation. It's the nurse. But the nurse, they have to know that the nurse needs to also clock off, and that the nurse also needs to have their own life separate from that duty. And this is the trap that a lot of Cancerians can fall into. They get this nurse, this non-stop nurse syndrome, and so it can be bad for them as well. But a lot of these points are about just being mired for Cancer, being mired in things that they cannot let go of, that they cannot walk away from, and all that just kind of makes them more lonely, or makes them more physically alone, isolated, and or it pushes people away. People, especially people who don't want to settle down, or people who don't want to always have kids around, or always have like homey responsibilities around, or people who don't like nationalists, people who don't like sort of culturalists, people who don't like people just stuck in the past even. These other people probably want to build new things, or climb certain ladders. This is Capricorn energy coming out. They want to kind of ascend, while the Cancerian person might be quite afraid of doing that. Okay, that is my response to this video. Why this request? Why are water signs always alone? So thank you very much. I will be moving on to another video very soon. Thank you, Eva, for all of your video requests, and to anyone watching. Hope it was of interest. Take care and see you next time. Bye-bye.